Thank you so much for stopping by the channel. My name is LaShawn Splain Wilburn. I'm a coach to moms who are healing from parental estrangement. I do so by supporting moms with the 4 pillars of the Matriarch Code. The first pillar being accountability, the second pillar being healing, the third pillar being self-care, and the fourth pillar being a commitment to lifelong learning. I'm glad that you came in, and I'll get right to the discussion. I want to discuss the process of self-healing, okay? This process and I haven't come up with a name for it yet. This has been something that I've been on a journey. If you've been following my social media, mostly on TikTok now, and if you've been following the journey along some of the videos here on the channel, you know that I've been on this journey for 10 years. 6 of those years I spent in an endless cycle, which seemed like an infinite loop, because I couldn't get the lesson and I had things in the wrong order. Okay, so I want to share with you, let me take off my shoes here so I can get grounded. I want to share with you some things that people normally don't share until they've made it to the other side. And I used to think that that was something of a gimmick, that it was a marketing, ploy or scheme, that people come in and say, oh, well, I want to tell you, how I accomplish so many great things. Well, I'm here to share what I learned with you long before I've made money off of it. Long before I've, written some great book about my journey. I'm here to share with you, to give you encouragement, so that when you're on this journey in your beginning stages right now, that you can get some type of inspiration and encouragement, and to know that, yes, it's hard. Yes, you're going to fall. Yes, you're going to get up. Yes, you're going to fall again, and you may repeat that cycle quite a few times before you finally get to a space where you understand your why. That's going to be very important to you on this journey. So earlier today, if you viewed the TikTok that I put up this morning about the attic, right? And so I just want to do a very quick snapshot of the attic and the analogy that I used. The attic that I was speaking of is our mind. It's the top floor in our body, our home that we're in, our physical home that we're in. By starting here in the attic, we're able to master so much more, if we know exactly how to master that part of ourselves. And it requires a great deal of information. And sometimes people don't want to do exploration. And that exploration means digging down deep, getting into the deep parts of yourself that no one knows but you. And if you're not willing to do that, you're going to delay getting the lesson. You're going to delay having a journey that works to your benefit. So I wanted to share a quick little encouragement for you, and I hope something from it gives you the encouragement to keep pushing and to keep, working hard towards your goal of self-healing. I want to say beforehand as a disclaimer, I use experiences from my own personal journey, my own life. I use experiences from people that I've coached. I use experiences from research that I've done. I use experiences from what I've seen online and what I've watched and read, other people living their journey out in the open and sharing with others. So when it's my experience, I'm going to tell you, this was my experience. If it's something I researched, I'm going to tell you it's something that I researched or I read online. I'm going to explain to you where my perspective is coming from, because I never wanted to make it look like someone else's journey was my own. That's important to me because I need to be in a commitment of this thing with myself first. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. I need to have that commitment to me first, to always be true to me first. And that's how you should live your life. Always be true to yourself first. Don't lie to yourself. Don't pretend. Don't push things down. Don't act as if it doesn't bother you if it does. Because you know what? It only resurfaces. It comes up again. It boils to the top eventually. And you still have to address it. Are there going to be some times where you're going to run into some things that you really don't know how to process, and it's going to be easier to press them down until you figure that thing out? Of course. We all do. We all do. But that's when you get to a point where your journaling comes in handy, because the things that you can't figure out right now, the things you can't figure out at that moment, if you write them down, you can come back to them later. Maybe even put a little post-it in that part of your journal. Because as much as people pretend that they got these epiphanies that happen like that, sometimes you don't get an answer for years, for months, for days. It depends on the individual. And as I mentioned earlier today in the TikTok video, many of us have had to take this journey that has been ongoing, and it's been, life is happening, journey's happening, and it has had to operate like this because not everyone has the luxury to put everything else on hold and address what's hurting. Many of us have had to do this journey while we were doing life. Many of us have had to do this journey without the tools, without the resources. And we've been struggling. I know I was. And so I just wanted to, preface everything that we're talking about here with one, these are my life experiences. And if it's not, I'll tell you otherwise. Okay? So, in terms of the attic, I want you to think about a house. What's stored in the attic more often than not? Things that people don't want to really deal with, right? They just want to get them out of eyesight for a minute till they can get to them. Things they don't want to get rid of. Things they've been holding on to, right? We hear people say all the time, your mind is a powerful thing. And if you don't control your mind, you won't control anything else. Your thoughts will either bless you or rob you, right? And so when we think about an attic of a house, we think about boxes and tubs and just things, just stacked. That's waiting for, either to be, thrown out to the trash, donated, used in a different season. Those are many different things, and everyone's attic looks differently, depending on what their life experiences are, depending on what's important to them, what they've prioritized, right? And so when I ask you to look at your attic, see what you've stored there, I'm asking you to do inventory here. What are the things you think about? What are the things you stash away? What do you hide there? What's been put neatly into a box for a later day? What's hidden? The little crawl spaces in the attic. What boxes are there? What do they contain? Spring cleaning is part of our culture here, right? We have this whole thing in the country where, it's spring cleaning time, right? Spring happens, people start cleaning out garages and everything, right? That's sort of what happens in your mind, in your attic, when you make a decision to start your journey to self-healing. It's going up and taking an inventory. Journaling is your best friend. It is going to be your record keeper. It's going to be your witness. It's going to give testimony. It's going to help you to decide what belongs and what needs to go. But that's only if you're keeping an accurate record. As I mentioned earlier on in this video, it took me 10 years for this journey. 6 of those years in an infinite loop of building and stopping, building and tearing down. And that was because I was doing it wrong. You notice I kept saying building, and you can't build anything. You can't, because you have to completely destroy the old you. You have to completely dismantle the old you. And that doesn't happen overnight. Depending on what age you are, and within this community, many of us are 50 plus. We're moms and grandmas already. So many of us have been building this house, this temple, for at least, knowingly, at least, what, 40 years, let's say? Because we say about 10, you start to really pull away from your parents, have your own autonomy completely, where you are having awareness around you. I don't have any research to back that up, but this is a guesstimate. Let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, let's say 10. So when we start to notice that there is a need for a change, that's normally when what? The most of us here had to find out that there were some things that we may have already known about. And I've talked about this in other videos. Long before parental estrangement comes to our home, we've already had some moments where we've thought and questioned some of our belief systems, questioned some of our practices that we've had with our children and in our parenting. We've seen that some of those behaviors and some of the things our children maybe even brought to our attention are behaviors or patterns that have repeated themselves in other relationships, in our work relationships, our friendships, our marriages. So a lot of us here, if we're honest, we knew long before we ran into parental estrangement that there were some things that needed work on. But for a lot of us, we had no idea where to begin. I saw a TikTok video, and it was a parody. And the young man was talking about the difference between Gen Xers and millennials. And he was trying to explain to millennials why their parents were the way they were, and that they didn't have an awareness about what functional families look like. They didn't have an awareness that their families that they came from were dysfunctional. They just knew something was a little off, but that this is how family was. And so they continued the pattern, they continued the generational pattern into their own parenting. And as I've shared before on many of the videos, many of us thought we were changing those generational and parenting patterns, right? But what we did was create a whole new version of them. Why? Because we didn't have the proper tools. We didn't have the resources to say, hey, this is what healthy parenting looks like. This is what healthy discipline looks like. This is what autonomy is. This is why it's important. We didn't have those resources. So many of us are dealing with a reality that our children, who had way more access to information, way more access to free information on the World Wide Web, they have an awareness. They know, wait, that's not normal. Or I don't like the N word, normal. That's not functional. That's not healthy. And so they were able to say to their parents, to us, I don't like that you did thus and such. I don't like that this is how I was raised. I don't like that you don't think there was something wrong with your parenting. And so us, without the proper knowledge and without accountability, what do? Or what did we do? Well, I raised you the best way I knew how. My parents raised me that way. I didn't see any problem with it, right? That doesn't make it right. So how does that apply here, where we're on this journey now to find a solution to the things that we have been asking ourselves for years? How does it fit into the journey of deconstructing everything we've learned, everything we've thought, every pattern, every toxic belief system. How do we now get to a place where we can comfortably and confidently say, I'm ready to tear this down and rebuild something better? One of the things I talk to parents about when I'm coaching is what brought you here is not what is going to sustain you here. Many parents come and they're looking for answers. And the first answer they want, the first question they want the answer to is, when is my child going to reconcile with me? And like I said, what I say is, what brought you here will not be what will sustain you. You will have to make a conscious effort to make a different choice. You will have to make a conscious effort to say, what do I want out of this life? If I haven't been living in a functional and healthy lifestyle, what does that look like? And how does that change my life? How does my quality of life increase? Much of this deconstruction is going to be just as serious as you are about an end result. And if you're entering into this phase of healthy and healing because you need to be accepted by your adult child, you're not going to last. Because what's going to happen is when you can't reconcile, when you've called continuously, continued contact, continued pleading, continued begging, and it's still not working, you're going to stop. Because you've started this journey for the wrong reasons. I'm here hoping to encourage you and give you inspiration so that you have a guide. So that you can now easily pick out the things about you and who you had to become because of toxic and unhealthy behavior patterns and generational patterns, so that you can look at that and say, this is where I need work. So that you're willing to sit down and start investing in yourself. This is your earthly body. This is your earthly home. You're a whole spirit trapped within this thing. You get to make the changes that you choose. And your attic is where, that's the source. That is the source, the complete. When people say, I read The Secret tells you that it starts in the thoughts. Manifestation starts in the thoughts. People who get on the other side of this thing and they share their stories with everyone else or other people, and you hear it. I know I can speak for myself. I know for me, when I first heard it, I was like, oh, well, it has to be way more complicated than that. It has to be way more complicated now. I mean, who can't read a book and learn and answer questions and get the answers to their life changing, right? But that's not how this goes. There's a lot of dismantling, a lot of breaking down, a lot of analyzing. And for the people who have lived this way for so long, there's a certain amount of denial that is necessary to keep functioning in such a toxic pattern. You have to deny that you may be the problem. You may be the reason why. You have to deny that. You have to go outward. You have to point. It's because of so-and-so that I behave that way. It's because they did that to me first, so I had to do it back. It's because of where I was raised. It was because of my parents. It was because of the people who cared for me in my younger life. It's because of the people that I got into friendships and relationships with. It's because of them. But how much of it is because of you? How much is it? How much of it is because you failed to do the work on yourself? You failed to see the many times that you continue to allow harm to come to you, either by your own hands or the hands of someone else, had everything to do with the fact that you weren't stopping and giving yourself time to heal, for one, and you weren't stopping to see what was the active role of me in this. How do I fall into line here? When you hear people going to therapy for their relationships, whether it be two friends going to therapy, two people who are in an intimate relationship as spouses or partners, or if it's, a parent and child, a grandmother and child, grandmother and cousins, whatever. They say there's two parts to both the breakdown and the buildup of this relationship, right? The other person may have been disordered and caused pain, right? And I'm not talking about children to adults, young children to adults. I'm talking about when you have an awareness and you understand autonomy and you understand that you have the power, right? Babies don't understand that. Children don't really understand that. We're talking about as adults. So when you finally get to a place where you're able to go into therapy, two parties, we have to then analyze how the party who caused harm contributed, right? And what was going on in the party who was harmed, mine, when they didn't go after they were harmed, or that they came into contact with this person, right? Or that took them a long time to realize, if it's a child that's an adult, took them some time to realize or get the courage to speak up. These are functional parts of the equation that allow these two people, these two groups or individuals, to analyze and then to formulate a plan, set boundaries, work independently on themselves, or work corporately on their relationship. But a lot has to be dismantled. And sometimes one party doesn't want ownership, doesn't want accountability, right? The other party has to make a decision if this is what they're willing to go through, if they're willing to sacrifice their boundaries, if they're willing to allow this party to continue on and love them from a distance. Either way, it's the function of both parties. And how do we make that decision? We have to decide if we want to continue allowing harm to ourselves. We have to decide, what are we planning to get rid of or allow to occupy the attic in our house? What? Do we give this person a corner in our attic and say, oh, well, I'll come and I'll pick certain things out from there and I'll toss those out. But I'm going to keep this here because I need to have a piece of that just in case they want to change. Just in case they decide to be involved. No one gets to make that decision for you. You get to make it for yourself. And that decision determines how many times you wind back in the infinite loop. Never making progress, just making movement. You deserve a life that you look forward to waking up to, that you're excited about, that you look for ways to continue building and improving and dismantling more parts of that structure, of this structure, that you can improve on, that you can rebuild, that you no longer need, that you can get rid of. So I won't carry longer than we need to. I'm at the 24 mark. I just wanted to come in and share that with you, that the answer is in your attic. And if you as an individual can get some pen to paper and write out what are some of the things that are stored in your attic, and then make a decision which things are going to take priority on your list, and work on those things until they are resolved. Until you can do that, your journey is going to wind up in an infinite loop, because you are trying to address things outside yourself. You're trying to manipulate situations and relationships outside yourself to fit so that you're comfortable and you can temporarily, because you believe that if you can do this, that you can change a person, or you can make them desire you or be there for you or want to be in contact with you. And that's all you need. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, if you are starting this journey because of parental estrangement, that's fine. But it is not what is going to sustain you. You're going to have to make a commitment to yourself. And when you're ready to do that, be ready to work. Be ready to get your knees and toes and fingers jammed, dirty, stepped on, push through whatever amount of pain you can think of. Dismantling toxic generational patterns, toxic behaviors takes a lot of grit. Takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You're going to cry a lot. You're going to doubt yourself a lot. You're going to wonder why you're doing this a lot. You're going to wonder so many things. And maybe if I had someone who would be willing to still deal with me while I'm making this journey, then I could have an incentive. You can't look outside yourself for this motivation or this commitment. It has to come from within. It has to come from a complete willingness to have awareness first. Accountability follows awareness. If accountability can't follow the awareness, you may as well stop right there, because you can't go any further. If you can't be accountable for your behavior, for the harm you've caused, even if you don't believe that's harm that you caused, your perspective of what you've been to other people is not what's important. It's who they have received you as, who they have, how your behaviors have influenced or caused pain in their lives. You understand? And so I hope that something here encouraged you, something gave you inspiration, gave you a starting point so that you can start on your own journey. For the month of June, we're doing a complete teardown of the attic. We're going to start with how. And I'm not going to be just giving this stuff away, okay? I'm very well worth the money invested in me. You're getting years of trial and error condensed and compacted for you. So it's up to you. You can take what I give you here in these videos and in the different Snapchats I give, not Snapchats, but the little snapshots I give you over on TikTok, and you can build your own journey with that. Or you can sign up for my coaching. Before I go, something I want to say. Mental health, and this happens to be mental health, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Mental health is a key contributing factor to our attic. And sometimes there are chemical imbalances. Sometimes there are sometimes there's a lot too much to process on your own. And you may need the help of a therapist or a counselor. And I know how hard it is to go and see a therapist or a counselor because of the amount of stigma, the negative belief systems about having a mental illness or a mental health condition. But I will tell you this, if you're willing to invest in yourself, you're willing to ask the questions of your therapist or counselor to ensure that they know how to handle someone with either complex trauma, which means trauma upon trauma piled up on top of each other, or childhood trauma. You want to make sure that your therapist, counselor, psychiatrists, psychologists, that they are able to help you. Okay? Sometimes, and I'll give you a small example. I know we're at the 30-minute mark, but I want to give you a small example. Sometimes you can have someone who suffered neglect as a child, then maybe lived in a community that was violent, so they may have seen some violent things happen, may have been the victim of a crime, and may have experienced something like racism or police brutality. And all those things pile up on each other, okay?
I'm sorry.
Cancel. That can sometimes create multiple versions of trauma, okay? And I've heard people mention it online. I'm not going to even try and pretend I understand, but they've talked about little t traumas and big T traumas, okay? So you may want to look that up. I can't go into it. I just remember seeing it. But complex trauma is multiple traumas just combining on top of one another. So if that's been your life, if you had multiple things happen that were very traumatic for you, then you want a mental health professional that is well-versed, knows how to help people who have multiple traumas or complex trauma, okay? That comes with so much, and I'm not going to even pretend to be able to give you guidelines on that. You need to get your thinking cap on, get to pecking away at Google and find your therapist and ask them the questions. Tell them, I've had multiple types of things happen in my life. I need someone who can help me to walk through this stuff and sort it out, okay? You want to make sure that if you are not a spiritual person, that your counselor doesn't force spirituality on you. All these things are important. Your counselor should not make you feel like someone's talking over the top of you. They should not be doing all of the talking during your therapy sessions. They should be asking you questions and allowing you to speak. There should be homework. There should be resources for you to have that can help to empower you when you're out of the office with your mental health professional, okay? So I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight on that. Again, my name is LaShawn Splain Wilburn. I'm a coach for moms who are healing from parental estrangement, and I help moms by prioritizing their accountability, their healing, their self-care, their commitment to lifelong learning, because what other way are you going to expand your mind, brain, heart, and spiritual self, right? You have to keep learning. You have to keep learning. Otherwise, you're not evolving. Okay, thank you so much if you've stayed in to this point, and I'll see you again later. Bye for now.